at 10. Adams the off balance.
Oh my goodness!
2 on the clock.
Alrighty, guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast and NBL Supercoach Sessions with myself and Jeremy Dark. How are you going, mate? Obviously, it's been a pretty busy week in terms of NBL stuff, and we've got a few things that we've got to talk about as well that is happening at the Basketball Fix very, very shortly. But how have you been, mate?
Yeah, there's never a dull moment in this Basketball Fix empire that's being created. We've got stuff going on. Heaps happening. And then, busy life coming up to Chrissy and stuff. So it's all that as well, man. It's, we're powering on.
We definitely are powering on. And obviously a quick little shout out to everyone that is currently on the YouTube stream, on the Instagram stream, everything going on as well. Now, what we are talking about right now with everything going on, my friend Jeremy, is I've been a little bit of a busy bee over the last couple of days and I'm creating a lot of work for us, but it's obviously really, really exciting going forward. But we will be creating NBL team-driven podcasts. So over the next couple of weeks, a Wildcats wrap is already up right now, which you can see if you're a Perth Wildcats fan. That is a weekly podcast by Adam Batt and Declan Pedra, breaking down all the biggest news topics and everything going on in the Perth Wildcats world from a week-to-week basis, obviously touching on the wins or losses from the round that was and looking to the round ahead. But coming up, though, we've got some really, really exciting news. So we're going to be kicking off another 4-team podcast over the next week as well. So we've got an Illawarra Hawks podcast coming out. We've got a Tasmanian Jack Jumpers podcast coming out. We've also got a New Zealand Breakers podcast coming out. And we've got a Sydney Kings podcast. Now, if you're a Brisbane Bullets fan, a Melbourne United fan, Adelaide 36ers, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, or a Cairns Taipans fan in the chat or listening to this podcast right now, reach out to us either in the comments of the YouTube or in our Instagram at The Basketball Fix and get in contact because we're looking for a couple of co-hosts for those shows as well. So really, really exciting opportunity for everyone involved and obviously for us here at The Basketball Fix because this is the next logical step, I guess, for us is bringing some people on to, have a bit of fun and talk about sport and talk about their in particular teams. And we've also got one of the guys in the chat who's always very, very active as well. Logan Angrove will be coming on and helping out with the New Zealand Breakers podcast as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do and, looking forward to working with Logan over the next couple of years, hopefully as well. So really, really exciting things coming up and obviously make sure you stay tuned for them as well. But let's get into today's episode now, Mr. Jeremy. And obviously we do this every single week when we're touching on NBL Supercoach. We break down our rankings, we break down our score. I'm going to start this week. So currently ranked at 1,721, moved down 21 spots over the week, had a pretty poor week, had 395. I thought it was about par, but with the loss in ranking points, obviously that does show that is not par. And there was some pretty big scores this week as well. I think the top score was just over 515, which is absolutely massive, compared to what we saw with our scores. But, obviously the disappointing things were some captain choices and some, I guess, poor captain choices as well. And obviously some other things which we'll break down a little bit later in the episode. But what about yourself, mate? What was your ranking and what was your score?
Yeah, well, I also went down 13 spots this week. I scored 414, but I was gangbusters. It looked like it was going to be a really, really good week until Sunday rolled around and just seemed to fall apart there. Like you said, captain choices hurt, couple of poor performances, guys that had a good first game and then just sort of didn't back it up on Sunday. So that sort of hurt me. I was shaping up really, really well until Sunday. So it kind of sucks because it felt like have been building something. I felt strong coming into the week and just died in the ass on Sunday. Too many beers Saturday.
Yeah, I was watching your team. Definitely, I was watching your team and it was a bit of an interesting one because obviously we've got some similar players and I was looking at them going like, okay, well, if he scores this and he scores this, Keandre Cook's one of those guys. So I thought if he hit his break even for you essentially or his projected score, but he could have had a monster score realistically if it wasn't for the poor game too. So we'll break down obviously that sort of stuff coming up very shortly, but still a relatively good score, 414 points. Logan's just put in the chat as well. He also scored at 414 on the weekend as well. So a couple of twins there as well. And I just want to quickly throw this one out as well. Logan actually messaged me. Logan messaged me this a couple of weeks back, I think it was. He said that you and Todd Blanchfield look like twins and you also sound very similar. So little shout out there to Logan. He said you two guys are very, very similar. So take that with however you want to take that.
Extremely ruggedly handsome.
He is. He's a good-looking bloke. But let's get into the reactions from last week anyways, mate. We're going to kick it off with my good performers. Now, I don't think we can look past this one guy in particular in terms of just obviously outstanding performances, and that's Mr. Bryce Cotton. 66 points in a single game week. What a man, essentially. He's just been an absolute tear. I'm looking forward to breaking down his performance once again on Beyond the Buzzer. I'm sure our listeners are probably getting over me and us talking about Bryce Cotton, but what else have you got to talk about realistically in the NBL world when this guy is breaking all-time NBL records as well? Another 40-point game, so that's 4 40-point games in a row, which is a 31-year-old record that he has just tied with the great Andrew Gaze. And the other player as well was Mason Peatling. So solid score. We obviously were tossing up last week, and we both actually went with this guy over Darius Days, but we were tossing up, do we bring in Darius Days or Mason Peatling? I'm pretty sure, did Peatling outscore Days and obviously had the really
I think
good
Days
price
only
rise
scored
as well.
12 points. Days only scored 12 points, I believe. So it was definitely, I think we both had him in our team when we revealed our teams last week, and then we both convinced each other, I think, to take Peatling when we were discussing it. It just was like, what are we doing? Why do we have Days? So I think we both went straight in and changed it. But yeah, and it paid off. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So sort of happy that old Darius didn't have his double Darius, which he was going off earlier in the year. So
he was floating around it though. I think he had 10 and 9 in that particular game, so he nearly got that little injection of the free points, I guess you could say, with the double doubles. But let's get into your good performer, mate. And obviously, it was a very, very good performer, to be honest with you. It's sort of it's always nice when you nail a trade in, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. It was a risk bringing in Matt Hurt. It was only a one-round trade. So you want to make sure that they do hit, but sort of had that hunch that he was going to go and play extremely well for Southeast Melbourne. And yeah, I think he scored 29 the first game and then backed it up with a 37. So he feels like he's definitely back as one of the premium forwards in the game. So I think, when it comes to all of these double game weeks, he could be a point of difference if you're looking for just consistency. He seems to be certainly scoring around that 30-point mark week in and week out now, after a little bit of a quiet sort of period when Josh King took over, but it seems to have found his spot again. So yeah, definitely happy with that.
Definitely. I just want to quickly say one thing with Matt Hurt. He had an incredible weekend. He's had a relatively good season, but I don't know what the NBL does with their MVP predictions. I don't know who he's doing that, but he was the third ranked MVP candidate for the whole season so far. So they've given him, after one good weekend, essentially a massive boost over, guys like Parker Jackson Cartwright, for example, who have still been great all season. So and Montrezl Harrell, all that sort of stuff as well. But it's going to be interesting. He's been great.
Yeah, definitely.
No, definitely. All right, let's get into the schedule thoughts now. Oh, sorry, we'll get into our poor performers, I should say, first. I'm skipping ahead of the run sheet. Now, there's probably two guys, and you can take whichever one you want here, mate, out of these two guys. But they've probably been, I guess, really, really poor performers over, this sort of maybe last 3 to 4 weeks for us when we brought these guys in. And they've been a little bit of a pain in the ass to try and get out because of their awkward price points as well. But you kick us off, mate, with what one you want in this sort of poor performance segment.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They've both been extremely disappointing, haven't they? Like, I'll start off with, say, Sam Menenga. I think with all the trouble that New Zealand have been having and really sort of desperate for someone like Menenga to step up, he has the build, he has the skill set, but he just can't seem to find any real consistency, especially offensively. He seems to take a lot of shots and just not really hitting them. So, it's a bit of a shame because he could have been one of those guys that you just locked in through this long period where New Zealand had all these doubles, and even now sort of having him on the bench is almost becoming a liability where he's sitting around that 200K mark, but like scoring 10 points a game, where you could be getting that from someone that's costing less, and sort of missed that time where he had a couple of good games and would have been a good time to sell him. But, hindsight's a beautiful thing. You thought he was going to be able to sort of give you at least 20 points a game and be a pretty solid double game week bench player or something like that. Or if you needed to move him in, you could still get that 40 points, but hasn't been the case. So yeah, definitely on the chopping block. Like you said, it's mucking around with trades and stuff this week. Like you just want to get Sam Menenga and this next guy out, but just sort of the priorities aren't there, unfortunately.
It's hard because I think obviously at this point of the season, everyone's trying to go from star player to star player. And in the process, we are missing out on these guys. And I think as the schedule sort of settles down like it does over the next couple of weeks, you will have the chance to get these guys out of your team. Now, if you have the chance to get them out now, 100% do so because your team's gonna be beneficial in the long term. You're still gonna have a bit of cash to play with all the money these guys have made. You don't want to lose it. But obviously the other guy is Rocco Zakarski. So Ryan's done a pretty good job there in the title and the description, I guess, that you can see on the screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. The word again. So yes, another poor performance. 7 points over 2 games. He's just really been disappointing. I just think the way that this team has, I guess, quickened up the play and the pace of play over the last couple of weeks, he struggled to adapt to it, I think, is the best way of describing it. Because, when you're looking at this team, it's really fast ball movement. Casey Prather, Bateman, Cook, Tyrell Harrison as well. You see what they're trying to get out of all their players, and that's a real fast sort of play style with lots of three-point shots. And I saw a video of Rocco Zakarski on social media. I don't know if you saw it, Jez, but he nailed 7 3-point shots in a row in this one video. And I'm sat there going, why doesn't he just try to experiment this in the game? It doesn't matter if you miss 5 or 6 in a game. It's about trying to build the confidence in game because it's different shooting around when no one's around you, no pressure's on. But obviously you want the big, bright lights. That's where it really does matter as well. We've seen it with Ben Simmons throughout his whole career as well. So, I just think realistically he's just got to start to gain a bit more confidence. And maybe it's just a thing that the coaches have got to instill in him is the fact that, put him out there, allow him to play his game. Don't confine him to just an inside game. Give him some freedom, and obviously, at the end of the day, you're there to develop him as well. But let's get into the schedule thoughts, mate, because I'm absolutely sick of talking about Sam Menenga and Rocco Zakarski over his last couple of weeks. Now, the schedule is at an interesting point now in the season. This is where we're touching on. A lot of these teams now are coming into big runs, or they're just moving away from these big runs. But we're going to touch it off with the first 3 teams on the list. So Adelaide, Brisbane, and the Illawarra Hawks. Now, the Adelaide 36ers will have 2 double game weeks in a row. So guys like Kendrick Davis, Montrezl Harrell, Isaac Humphries, very, very entertainable now. We've got Brisbane, who have still got 6 games in a row on the double game weeks. Illawarra Hawks have still got 5. They're coming into a 5-week run on double game weeks, which is massive. So this is where we're probably looking to bring in guys like Trey Kell, Tyler Harvey, Sam Froling, for example. And then we've got the New Zealand Breakers, the Sydney Kings, and the JJs on one double game week this week. So it's going to be very interesting because there's going to be chances where I've seen a lot of trades, teams bring in Xavier Cooks, for example, who, is a good move essentially because he's going to be a great player, but he's only on the 1 double game week. So I guess there are going to be some questions potentially floating around on the chat as well. And there are a few things that have been floating through my head as well, but it's going to be very, very interesting. We'll
100 million things float through your head, Josh. Don't be silly. Not just a couple, mate.
Mate, there's a lot of things going through my head right now, but let's get into the single game weeks, mate. Who's got the single game weeks this week, and who would we maybe liking to maybe bring in for next week as well, potentially?
Yeah, well, not a lot, really. I think obviously it's the rest of the teams. There's 4 teams. It's Cairns, Southeast Melbourne, Perth, and Melbourne United. Cairns do have a double game week next week, but I think, unless you're bringing in Taran Armstrong, I don't think there's anybody really else of any real interest there. I think Taran Armstrong's break even was fairly low, sitting around 10 or 11, I believe. So he could be a potential, if you need to downgrade to free up some cash to buy another one of these guns, it could be a possibility. But I don't think there's a lot of interest really around these Cairns players at the moment. And then Southeast Melbourne are on 2 singles. Perth still have 3 single game weeks. And Melbourne United are now on, is it 3 single game weeks? Is that correct? Just got to double check that. Because it was 3. Yeah, it is 3. Yeah. So that's the thing. So it feels like, I think we've both evacuated our Melbourne United players heading into that stretch, especially with their form being a little bit down. They've sort of Supercoach wise, I think all players have had sort of really up and down performances, which has made it really, really tough and makes it even tough then to hold on to them through these 3 single game week periods. Because take Jack White, for example, could have been also on that list of poor performances last week because scored 29 in the first game and then bummed out with 17 in the second game and hurt us all that captained him. So Yeah, a bit of a shame. So I think, everybody's getting rid of those guys. Perth, same thing. Southeast Melbourne, like I played with the idea to hold Matt Hurt, actually. But just at the moment, I have traded him straight out. But yeah, I think when there's so many of these big gun players, so many players on double game weeks, you got to sort of fill your team with that in some way or another, and you can't be sort of carrying too much single game week weight.
No, definitely. Now, we're going to go to a very, very short break here. And after the break, we're going to reveal my team first. We're going to get the worst team out of the way. And then we'll reveal Jeremy's team after that and touch on our trade thoughts. All right, Jez, let's get into these sort of early trade talks and, I guess get into my team. Now, I'm not very happy with my team, to be honest with you. The projection is 502. This week's trades is Jack White to Montrezl Harrell and Matthew Dellavedova to Trey Kell. So I'm floating with two options at guard, and that's Jalen Adams for the single week play. He's been an absolute tear over the last couple of weeks. He's been averaging around that 20 and 8 sort of mark, I guess you could say, and scoring some really nice Supercoach points. But Trey Kell's run of obviously 5 double game weeks, I believe it was, is obviously making him a little bit more tempting to me. And obviously you could go Tyler Harvey as well, but they've both been scoring around the same amount of points most weeks. And Trey Kell's the extra $30K cheaper than Tyler Harvey. So with my trades, it currently leaves me with $90,000 left over for next week, which will most likely be a Parker Jackson Cartwright to Kendrick Davis trade. And then obviously probably getting rid of one of Sam Menenga and Rocco Zakarsky next week as well, down to somebody as well potentially. So, I'm not really liking where my team is at, to be honest with you, mate. Obviously, the starting lineup is relatively solid. I'm holding Bryce Cotton purely based on this run. I think you've just got to. He's still making incredible amounts of cash. He's at $483,000 right now. So, you can potentially hold him for as long as possible. And they've obviously got a decent run sort of at the back end of the season as well, in which you'll want to have him as well. So, it's going to be interesting. Casey Prather, I'm happy I made that move last week as well. 69 points. I will take that every day of the week. I think he made another 30K last week as well. So, I know cash isn't the most important thing right now. It's still points at this point of the year. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to try and put myself to sort of my goal for the rest of the season is to get within the top 1,000, I think, right now, mate, or even trying to push the top 500. So, we'll play the slow burn game as well. What are your thoughts, mate, on my team? Likes, dislikes, early thoughts on my team?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit scary purely on the fact if I look at what I'm projected to score 80 points more than you, but I've gone all out and sold a lot of stuff. So I think that's the biggest concern. But it just depends when you're going to make your run. Like you said, your sort of points are the most important now, but maybe not, because if you can, I've even found this week when you're starting to try and bring in all these guns at the moment, just that little bit of cash, say sold Jack White, he lost like 12,700 or something like that it was last week, which forced me to into sort of some of the trades that I am doing now, because I think cash is still important, because we're all going to be trying to get all of these gun players in, especially in round 16 and 17 where every team is on double game weeks. You're going to want the top best 10 players basically that you can afford. So you want the top players in every position, and then you want sort of some of these really good sort of mid-range players that are going to be on your bench so you can be smashing out points. So it's going to be really, really tough, those rounds. It feels like, it's going to be easy because everyone's on double game weeks, but some teams are the people that have earned the cash before then are going to have the cash to be able to have all of these massive guns in there. So I think it's important that you're still just, ticking away, earning a bit of cash, but you're going to have to make a run soon if you're going to make the top 500, buddy.
Oh, definitely. And I think one thing as well I will say quickly is projection's been absolutely nothing. I think all season I've been projected as much as 50 to 60 points more than what you have most rounds, and I still have failed to eclipse that margin sometimes as well. So hopefully it's all reversed now, mate, to be honest with you, and we'll see a little bit of role reversal there as well. But this is a bit of a, I guess, what's the way of saying it? I guess shitting in your own bed sort of situation as well, maybe would be the best way to describe it. But obviously, burning all my boosts this early in the season, it's leaving me a little bit precarious, is probably the best way to describe it as well, because a third trade would be nice right now for bringing in some of these guys like Kendrick Davis, for example, over a Trey Kell, which could see me earn, a lot more cash and also an extra 30 to 40 points on the way Kendrick Davis has been playing. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But again, we'll watch and see how the week goes on. Stranger things have happened for sure. Now, Jeremy, let's get your team up, mate, because I've seen in the run sheet what your trades are. And my golly,
It's wild,
am
isn't it?
excited to see this thing pop up on the screen. Yes, it is very wild.
It's fucking wild,
108
man.
points he's projected. That is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, insane. I've gone all out. It was hard. My biggest. I go through my team first for those people that are listening to the podcast. I have Parker Jackson Cartwright and Kendrick Davis as my two guards. Tyrell Harrison starting center. Then I have Montrezl Harrell and Xavier Cooks as my two starting forwards. Then still carrying Sam Menenga and Peatling as my bench forwards. Rocco Zakarski going backwards, basically. Poor old Rocco. And then have Keandre Cooks and Angus Glover as my bench guards. So the only player that's not on a double game week is Angus Glover, and he's probably even going to lose me a little bit of cash this week. So that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, I've gone all out for points this week. I sold Bryce Cotton, and that was sort of the tough call. I agree with you. He's going to go up in price. I think his break even is 16 or something like that. So it's going to be, that's where the juggle starts, because of course, if he stays this hot, or even if he stays at 70% of the heat that he is carrying at the moment, you're going to have him in once Perth go back on double game weeks, because you're just going to fall way behind. And then it's that juggle of, okay, if Kendrick Davis is still also going to stay this hot, then you're going to need to have him. And it looks like likely Parker Jackson Cartwright will be on the chopping block, but you're going to need to downgrade somewhere, because PJC at the moment is just bleeding cash, and these other guards are getting more and more expensive. So it's a risk, I think, for me to trade him out. I was even going to trade out Parker Jackson Cartwright this week. That was the plan, because he hasn't been performing as well as these other guards, and I was going to hold Bryce Cotton. But like I said, with Jack White losing a bit of cash, Matt Hurt held cash, but then there was somewhere else in the 400 different combinations of trades that I did this morning. I just couldn't find the cash, because some of these players that I wanted to trade out, Parker Jackson Cartwright also went down. So I think I was short like 24K, and Jack White and Parker Jackson Cartwright both lost money last week. So it ruined that straight trade. So I had to then use my final boost, because I brought in Cooks for White, sold Hurt for Trell, and then Davis for Cotton. Massive. So pretty
Absolutely
wild. But
massive, mate.
Just going for points at the moment, not holding anything back. I was gonna try and hold my boost to that sort of round 19-20 when everybody goes off these double game weeks, or it was but I don't know. There's no point fucking around if you need points and we need to start moving up in the standings. You got to sort of take that now, I think, and not leave it before it's too late anyway, and you can't really make any big jumps or big moves.
Definitely. And I'm just quickly grabbing up something just so I can ask you a question about this. Now, the only thing I've got a question about is, and I know Parker's been amazing all season, but their play style has really changed over the last couple of weeks. Would you start Keandre Cook over him? Now, Cook plays the Cairns Taipans and then the Adelaide 36ers, and we saw what Bryce and I guess a lot of the other Perth Wildcats players did against the Cairns Taipans, and Adelaide do leak points. Yeah. And then for Parker Jackson Cartwright, they play Sydney, then Tasmania. So that's a pretty hard run there for Parker. Yeah. I know you're not probably going to trade him out, and that's not what I'm trying to get you to do right now. But it's just raising the question, because Cook has showed he can score huge like Parker, and I guess if we're looking at matchup basis there, I'm probably going Cook over Parker Jackson Cartwright, to be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, it's definitely an option because he's playing the top two defensive teams in the league. They've been struggling to score for the last since this run, obviously, of 5 losses in a row. So they've had some real troubles. So it could be it's definitely on the cards, but it's crazy to think that you would do that. It's all like the trouble also is with like Keandre Cook. He's also been a little bit inconsistent, like we saw on the weekend. Has a really, really big game. It feels like one of their imports goes off each game almost. It's like, is it Prather, is it Bateman, or is it Cook? They're sort of not all on together, and they sort of find the guy that's hot or find the guy that's a little bit more free, and they're scoring all the points. But yeah, I don't know. It's a big call. But would you start Cotton over Parker Jackson Cartwright? Is that an option?
Oh, I wouldn't personally, if I'm being honest with you, purely based on the fact that they're playing Illawarra. Now, I know last time Cotton played Illawarra, he had 40 points, had a massive game. I think had nearly 60 fantasy points or Supercoach points as well. But yeah, I'm still always taking the double game week player over a single game week, as good as Cotton's been over this sort of run. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think obviously the Cook-Parker conversation is a genuine one. And if you had Casey Prather as your backup guard or James Bateman, for example, as well, the same question I think could be 100% raised because all those Brisbane guys, I should say, have been very, very good over the last couple of weeks. So it's going to be very, very interesting, mate, but a very, very solid team. And before we move on to Darks doubles, quick little thing to remember as well for everyone playing at home, set your alarms for Boxing Day. So Christmas Day will be the last game of round number 13, and then we move on to round number 14 on the first game of Boxing Day. So make sure that you are not getting too drunk on Christmas Day and you're still able to go on there and check your Supercoach scores and your team on Boxing Day and get that team in for round 14 because it's going to be a very, very festive and fun period for everyone playing NBL Supercoach. But Jeremy, let's get into Darks doubles, mate. I want your top 4 options this week. They're looking good. I think there is some juicy options this week. This is probably the most stacked, I guess, roster of captain choices that you've had over the last couple of weeks, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think if you've got Kendrick Davis, you're nuts not to captain him. I think they've got a good run over this Christmas period. They play Southeast Melbourne and Brisbane. And look, he scored, since his return from suspension, he scored 62 against Melbourne, 66 against Perth, and then 62 against New Zealand. So, I think you got to ride that momentum and just close your eyes and put it on there and don't even think about it for the rest of the week because there is no real other option if you have Kendrick Davis in your team. Then my second is this week Xavier Cooks. If you smart or dumb like I am and bringing him in just for the 1 week, then he's definitely a good option. Scored 49 against Brisbane. Brisbane do leak a fair amount of points, and it is a pretty good matchup often for a player, like a power forward like Xavier Cooks against Brisbane. They do generally score well. So, but then he also scored. They play New Zealand and Illawarra, and he scored 36 points in both games against New Zealand earlier this year, and he's averaged 37 points in the 2 games against Illawarra. So they're pretty good numbers there, pretty safe. I think you know what you're going to get, and he does have a sort of high ceiling if he does go off points-wise and scores a whole heap of points. So definitely an option. And then Montrezl Harrell as well. Just purely because Adelaide have those good matchups. Southeast Melbourne and Brisbane could be an absolute beastly score for both Kendrick Davis or Montrezl Harrell. And then, like what we said, like PJC is always an option if he's in your team and it's a double game week, but he has these 2 really, really bad matchups. So you could take the risk if you dare, because I don't think a lot of people will be captaining PJC this week. So it could be something that does pay off. But the odds and the statistics and numbers would suggest otherwise this week. So they're my top 4. Is there anyone else, Josh, that you might be considering besides Bryce Cotton?
Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? Like, I think you can nearly throw Tyro Harrison in there because his good games are, as good as the guys like, Xavier Cooks and Montrezl Harrell, but the consistency there isn't as much of a thing with Tyro Harrison over Xavier Cooks and Montrezl Harrell. But, these all four of those guys are just incredible. I think you can't go past all four of them. And to be honest with you, you're probably not going to go past the top three. You're going to have at least one of them in your team. So I think you'd be stupid to go anywhere else, mate, to be honest with you. So, yeah, you've nailed it. I think the only one realistically that is probably not the chance that I would captain is Parker Jackson Cartwright, but he has the potential to score the highest points of the round as well because we know what he can produce. So you really can't go wrong with all four of those guys, mate. But let's get into some of the questions here now. We've got a couple of questions from Instagram and a couple of questions from the YouTube as well. Dean Sowry has asked us on Instagram, better to sell Parker Jackson Cartwright or Cotton to get in Davis? Now, this is a tough one because I think this purely comes down to who you've got at that second bench option. That second starting guard option, essentially. Now, if you've got Keandre Cook, Bateman, Prather, for example, I'm trading out Parker Jackson Cartwright and holding Cotton for another week. I think that's the simple play there. I don't think that you have to waste a trade and get rid of Cotton this week if you're getting rid of Parker Jackson Cartwright. So, yeah, what are your thoughts, mate? Would you do Parker Jackson Cartwright or Cotton?
Yeah, well, I was looking to get out Parker Jackson Cartwright first, to be honest. So yeah, I think you're right. It's dangerous getting rid of Cotton, and if you do have one of these other half decent guards from Brisbane, or even if you have like Trell or Trey Kell, or Harvey or someone like that, that's like one of these sort of big, like good. The top end of the mid-range scoring guards, I think you can definitely get rid of him now. I think they go on, after this week, they go on a little run there of single game weeks as well. So this is their, where are we? Yeah, well, from next week, from round 14, they actually have a single. So it's not a bad time to trade him out now because they're going on that single game week before they go on another, they still go on another run of four double game weeks. So I don't know, like it is tough. It just depends. Like Cotton is definitely a keeper forever, where Parker Jackson Cartwright's starting to be a little bit unsure about. So yeah, I would sell Parker Jackson Cartwright and keep Cotton if I had the cash.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I'm on the same boat there as well. And Dean's also asked, quick little answer here, mate. Montrezl Harrell or Kendrick Davis for the week?
Kendrick Davis.
Kendrick Davis, love it. I think, I don't know. It's a tough one, eh? Like I've been tossing this up in my head because I could go for Montrez or I could go for Kendrick on my trades, but yeah, I'm gonna go Davis. I think I'm only probably thinking trades only because I've got him in my team over Davis, but we'll go with Davis for sure. Logan wants to know: is there any cheapies on the horizon, even if it's for a single game week this week as well? Now, Logan, I've got one guy for you. I'm not sure if Jez has got anyone that he's thought off the top of his head, but I'm thinking of Kawhi. So double game week this week for the Sydney Kings. Let's just run past his last 6 games. So he's had 26, 22, 17, 8, then 16, 27, 27. Now, he is the first man off the bench for the Sydney Kings. Let's just say he goes out and gives you a 50. He's priced at 183. His break even is currently 27. You're making about 20K next week and maybe holding him for another single next week. So I think at this point of the season, there aren't too many cheapies on the horizon, to be honest with you, to bring in for a single game week. But if there is one, I think Kawhi is a guy that you can probably genuinely think of. But have you got one at all, Jez?
Yeah, well, I mentioned him a little bit earlier. It would be Taron Armstrong. His break even was around 10 or something like that. Because
he's about 280K now, isn't he?
Is it? No. Yeah.
So I'll get him
falling. Yeah, he is. He is 288. So it's not a cheapie, but I don't know. It sort of feels like, takes him out of that cheapie range, then really, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anyone.
It's a nice play.
Yeah, I looked to try and find someone that I could earn a little bit of cash with that was going to give me, say, 20 points per game, but on a double game week. And there just sort of didn't really seem to be anyone that caught my eye that much.
Well, I think the other play as well, though, if you haven't already got him, is Mason Peatling. So, I think that's your best sort of cheapie play with a nice run, priced at 140. Break even this week currently sits at 24. He's got 24 points to score over 2 games. So that's a nice little break even as well. So maybe they're just a couple of the best ones maybe to bring in over the next couple of weeks. But Logan also, for the last question of the episode here, Jez, as well, he's asked, is Tanner Groves a possibility? So I'm just going to get up Tanner's round last week, and I'm a big fat no on this one, mate, to be honest with you. He hasn't shown the consistency. He hasn't had a chance to show really.
He scored 27 last week.
There we go. So 27. I'm not sure if that's enough for me to really sit back and go, yep, let's lock him in. Let's bring him into the team, because I know his break even, I think it was just 11. And they've got the double game week next week. But yeah, I'm not sold on him at all. I think he had a bit more of an increased role without Sam Wardenberg in the team last week. Absolutely.
And you'd expect Sam to come back in. He would seem to be like a bit of a late exclusion and should be back, I think. So we'll see.
Well, I think it's just the joys of the NBL world with the injury reports and everything that goes on that we need to figure out for sure over the next couple of weeks. But thank you, everyone, for joining the live stream tonight. It's been absolutely awesome as always. We love answering your questions. We love chatting to you guys in the chat. And obviously, if you are listening to this afterwards as well, thank you for listening to the podcast. Now, like we mentioned at the start of the episode, plenty going on at the Basketball Fix. We have an abundance of podcasts coming out over the next couple of weeks. If you didn't hear it at the start of the episode, we are doing individual team podcasts run by you, the fans, for fans. So really, really exciting. We've obviously got the Perth Wildcats Wildcat Wrap already up and running. We've got a Sydney Kings one over the next couple of weeks, an Illawarra Hawks, New Zealand Breakers, Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, and plenty more on the works and on the horizon as well. So our own Logan Angrove in the chat as well. He's also chatting around there as well. He'll be joining the New Zealand Breakers episode, which we're super excited about. And like I said earlier, if there is a team that we haven't started yet, which is the Brisbane Bullets, Adelaide 36ers, Southeast Auckland Phoenix, and Melbourne United, if you're a supporter of those teams, reach out to us in the comments or on Instagram at the Basketball Fix Podcast, and obviously reach out and see if you are the right fit for those podcasts. But until next time, though, that has been NBL Supercoach Sessions. We hope you've got your Basketball Fix.
Turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Pocket 10. Adams the off balance. Oh!